Hi everyone, Heather here with PersephoneReturns.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. And this one is from Monday, April 16th, all the way through Sunday, April 22nd of 2018. And I just wanted to take a second before we get into this to thank you all for watching my videos and for subscribing to my channel. I just started doing this on this channel, I think in January, and my last video last week got a ton of views. So I do want to thank you for that. And thank you to all of you who've been reaching out to me for readings and with questions and all of that. And if you do want to keep up to date with the astrology as it happens every single week, I post a video every single weekend. Today I'm posting it on Monday because I'm a little bit behind. I had construction going on in my home, and my home happens to be my workspace. So I had to delay it because of the noise. But typically I post a video every Saturday or Sunday with the forecast for the week ahead for all 12 signs, and that's what I'm doing today. And so if you want to keep up to date, please subscribe to my channel down below, and you can also follow me on Facebook. That link is in the description below, and if you want to book a reading, of course, you can always do that. Again, the link is in the description below. And so today we're going to be getting into some pretty sort of interesting karmic astrology, because we have Saturn, the planet of karma, the planet of lessons, the planet of boundaries, restrictions, limitations, responsibility, is actually going to be stationing to go retrograde for the very first time in Capricorn. So it's stationing at 9 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. And so that's going to be sort of the main event this week. The other things that we have going on, we have Pluto that'll be stationing to go retrograde, I think on Sunday, if that's correct. Saturday or Sunday? Sunday, yes. So Pluto will be stationing to go retrograde on Sunday the 22nd. And so that's another very karmic sort of transformative aspect, especially for those who are ruled by Pluto, which would be Scorpios. And Scorpio risings in particular are going to be feeling this Pluto stationary position the most. Capricorns will also be feeling it, and they'll of course be feeling Saturn going stationary as well. On Tuesday, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn's right now transiting its home sign. And so, Capricorns this week and the earth signs in general are going to be feeling a lot of action. And it's going to be the most sort of intense for the cardinal signs, which is Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, and also for Scorpios and Scorpio rising in particular because of that Pluto stationary. But for the earth signs in general, especially if you have your sun, moon rising at the end degrees of Taurus or at the end degrees of Virgo, I would say between, let's say 18 to 27 degrees or something like that, or 25 degrees. That would be the strongest energy of this, but you're going to be having a really beautiful trine going on right now between Venus, which is in the sign of Taurus, and Pluto, which brings a lot of really intense, passionate energy on Tuesday. So the same day that Saturn will be stationing, so we might feel a little bit heavy on Saturday. When Saturn stations, it's sort of a weird energy. It's like time stops, right? Because Saturn is the planet that represents time. It represents, the cycles of time. It represents age, and it's one of those planets when in your chart, if it's doing something difficult, those difficulties get lighter and easier with age. And so Saturn is Chronos, right? Chronos rules time. And so it is kind of this weird sort of energy where time sort of stands still when Saturn is stationing retrograde, and that's going to be occurring on Tuesday evening. But we do have a lot of really beautiful transits on Tuesday. Tuesday is actually going to be a wonderful day outside of the fact that Saturn is stationing. And Saturn's stationary position is not anything to be afraid of either. If it's stationing in square or in conjunction or in some sort of difficult aspect, again, if you're in the cardinal signs with your sun, moon rising somewhere around 9 degrees, so I would say 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees, even to like 11 or 12 degrees, you're going to be feeling this a little bit more strongly than other people. But if you have your sun, moon, and rising in those cardinal signs, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, you're going to be feeling the heaviness, and you're going to be feeling the burden of restriction, limitation, and responsibility a little bit more so. It's a very sobering, somber aspect where your mood can feel a little bit suppressed, where you feel sort of bogged down and heavy, and it can lead to like a little bit of a depressed mood, or it can make you feel a little bit more serious, and it can feel just a little bit stressful or a little bit heavy, a little bit frustrating, because it can feel, especially if it's like your sun or your rising sign that's being squared by Saturn or conjunct Saturn, it feels like, you want to move forward with things and you just don't have the energy, or you just don't have the ability to do so because there are roadblocks, there are responsibilities that you have to take care of before you can move forward. And that's actually what Saturn retrograde is all about. It's about taking care of the responsibilities that we've taken on while Saturn was direct, and letting go of the responsibilities responsibilities we took on when Saturn was direct that are not in alignment with what we need to be doing, that are not our responsibilities to carry, right? So it's about having appropriate boundaries and looking back and reflecting on the past 7 months when Saturn was direct, because Saturn is direct about 7 months, a little bit more. And it's retrograde for just under 5 months each year. So it's a long stretch of time when Saturn is retrograde. And what this time period of Saturn retrograde is actually meant for is for us to go back and look at what we've done, what responsibilities, what new structures we've built for ourselves and built for our lives while Saturn was direct these past 7 months. And to take care and wrap up and keep going with the things that are working for us and that we're meant to, take care of, and to take responsibility for our own decisions, right? And so we can't just completely purge and let go of the responsibilities that we took on that are not working for us. We have to actually wrap things up. We have to do things the right way. We have to make sure that we're letting go of things responsibly, right? We're not just letting it fall by the wayside and, leaving it for somebody else to take care of our messes for us or something like that. That's not what this is for. This is for us having to assume responsibility. Hey, I made this decision. I decided I was going to take on this burden, but I don't want it anymore. So now what do I do to let go of it? What do I do to take care of it? What do I do to make sure that I don't have to deal with this moving forward by the time Saturn is moving direct in September? So we have this 5-month period where we're going to be looking really closely at our boundaries. And this is also not a good time to take on new responsibility if you can help it. If Saturn's retrograde in your chart, that changes things a little bit. And a lot of people do have Saturn retrograde in their chart because it is retrograde for like 4.5 months, 5 months each year. So, that changes things a little bit where this is more like your home energy. And so, maybe you can take on more responsibilities and things like that, and it would be okay. But in general, it's about setting appropriate boundaries and knowing what your limitations are, right? Recognizing that you do have limitations, recognizing that you can't do everything for everyone and be everything for everybody. And, that's a lot of what this retrograde period represents. And especially if it's going to be touching your chart in a way that is more significant, which we'll get into as we get into the forecast for all 12 signs. The other thing that's going to be going on is that, as I mentioned before on Tuesday, a lot of really great energy, though. Saturn might make things a little heavy. It might make it so, it's a little bit difficult to push forward with something, or we have to take a hard look at some sort of situation we've locked ourselves into and we've created for ourselves that we really need to work on. Relinquishing control of, letting go of. But again, doing so through the proper channels, not just being all irresponsible and just saying, I'm not doing this anymore, and then leaving things a mess, right? So that's part of the energy. But we do have a lot of really nice stuff going on. The moon is in the sign of Taurus. It's going to be highlighting this really beautiful trine between Venus and Pluto. And I love Venus-Pluto trine. I love Pluto trine to any planet. Pluto trines to, any of the personal planets in general are some of the best aspects. It brings truth, it brings intensity, it brings deep intimacy, and it's also one of the most restorative, regenerative aspects that you can have in astrology, because Pluto is one of these planets that's a deep healing planet. It heals you from the inside out. It transforms you. It transforms your life from the inside out. And so this is a really important time for powerful and profound healing in relationships, right? Because Venus rules relationships, it rules love, it rules partnership, it rules commitment. And so this is a time when we can heal through old wounds, when we can drudge up all the old stuff that we're holding on to, right? It's our responsibility to this. It's not just healing through relationship with the other person, having to assume responsibility for everything. Pluto is another one of those planets, especially in the sign of Capricorn, where you're looking at your own personal responsibility for the situations you've created for yourself, right? And so Pluto is looking at your role in creating a mess in relationships, your role in the power struggles, your role in feeling disempowered in your relationships, right? Giving your power away when it's not necessarily, it's not necessary to do so, right? And so through this process of looking at our own stuff, looking at how we deal with relationship, looking at our deepest fears and insecurities surrounding relationships, surrounding our self-worth, especially for women, these types of things can come up very easily in a way that's not scary, in a way that helps us to be able to trust more in relationship, right? Because Pluto is one of those planets that brings suspicion. And when Pluto's in a nice aspect to Venus, sorry, when Pluto's in a nice aspect of Venus, it helps us to learn to trust others, right? To trust people, that we can lean on people, we can confide in them. And this is an excellent time to do so. This is a really good time to connect with people in relationship and to share ourselves with others. And so that's really important to sort of make note of. on Tuesday in particular. We're also going to be having, the moon is going to be in Taurus, making pretty much only really nice aspects with all the planets. It's going to be making a really nice sextile with Neptune, which is a very dreamy, very loving, very compassionate sort of energy. It's going to be making a really nice trine with Mars, right, which is helping us to more easily take our intuition and, turn that into action, take our feelings and convert that into action in a way that's very positive for us, where we're not necessarily being driven to act impulsively on our feelings, but we're being driven to act on our intuition in a way that benefits us, right, with that Mars aspect. So there's a lot of momentum going on Tuesday, even with Saturn stationing. And the momentum is going to be more about taking care of what you've already started, right? And what you've already taken responsibility for, and all those things that we already talked about. The moon will be making an opposition to Jupiter, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just can indicate that we might overdo it or have unrealistic expectations for what's going to be going on that day. And, it'll be making that trine to Pluto and that conjunction to Venus later on in the day around between 2 and 3 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, which is where I'm at in my time zone. And so that'll be occurring just a few hours after the Venus trine to Pluto comes exact. So it's highlighting that as well. So Tuesday I like. The moon does go void, of course, though, at 3:05 p.m. Again, that's Mountain Standard Time, which is Pacific time. And so after that time period, there's not a lot of momentum, right? That's where that's where time is standing still, because during that void, of course, moon period, we're having Saturn stations in the evening. So that'll be sort of a weird it'll be a weird evening. It'll be an evening where it's good to sort of just sit back and take stock of things. It's not necessarily good to just jump into stuff later in the day on Tuesday. But anyway, enough about Tuesday. The other thing that's going on is we do have the Sun conjunct Uranus, which is happening on, Wednesday. And so on Wednesday, Sun conjunct Uranus it's highlighting the end degrees of this Uranus and Aries transit, which we're actually moving to Uranus and Taurus beginning in May of this year, so next month. So very, very soon, we'll be starting the Uranus and Taurus transit, which we're already starting to feel a little bit. And I've done videos on this for all the signs on Astrology's channel. I've done an interview with Lada about this, but I am actually doing another video. I'm interviewing one of my teachers. His name is Robert Phoenix. I'll be doing that tomorrow. Actually, I'll be posting it later this week. So we'll be going really deep into Uranus and Taurus and what this means on more of a global scale, and comparing it to what happened the last time Uranus moved into Taurus and all those cycles, and how that relates to where we're at right now. And so you can see what for the next 8 years what's going to be happening globally. And so we'll be getting into that. It'll be really, really interesting. I'm excited for that. So stay tuned, subscribe. You'll see it when it pops up. But in general, right now, Uranus is finishing up that Aries transit. So if there's something that you haven't changed in the Aries area of your life that needs to be changed, that needs to be disrupted, that somewhere where you still need that liberation, that freedom to create more sovereignty for yourself in the Aries area of your life, which we'll get into a little bit in the forecast, then that's going to be highlighted today. Or sorry, not today, Wednesday. It'll be highlighted this week. I'm a little jumbled, huh? But yeah, so that's going to be highlighted this week. So if you feel frustrated, if you feel especially Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if you feel this like unsettled feeling and it's specific to one area of your life, that's a clue that you need to change something, that disruption is needed, that you need to be liberated, that you need freedom, right? Because Uranus is the great liberator. And what it does is it changes things so you can become more free, more sovereign, more independent in your mindset and in the way that you interact and engage with this reality. So it's the great awakener as well, so it can bring really powerful downloads and insights, which can be more prevalent, especially because the sun represents, our consciousness and all of that, the soul's expression and physical reality. And so we can connect to our higher selves and have these downloads, have these inspirations a little bit more freely and a little bit more easily as we come into the middle of this week, especially for those who have planets at the end degrees of Aries. And then at the end of the week, we have on Sunday this Pluto station. And Pluto station, so when Pluto stations, that's when it's usually most significant. There'll be like a lot of transformation, a lot of upheaval, a lot of very strange energy. It can feel quite intense. And for, again, Scorpio rising people in general, I have Scorpio rising, some of the most intense periods of my life, the biggest changes, the biggest transformations, and some of the greatest difficulties have occurred when Pluto is stationing in key positions in my chart. And so, you know, it's not always that way, but it is significant. So pay attention to what's going on, especially if you know that you have planets at the end degrees of the cardinal signs, you know, between, I would say between 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, like that range, just because it's an outer planet. So I'm going to give it a smaller orb. So maybe like 19 to 22 degrees would be 23 maybe. But yeah, so in the cardinal signs, which again, Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, the cardinal signs have been getting it kind of hard lately. Because we've been having a lot of Aries action, we've been having a lot of Capricorn action, and that's going to continue this week. But it's not going to continue to be like this forever. A lot of stuff is shifting into Taurus, so, you know, the fixed signs will start to get some of the action, especially coming into May when Uranus shifts into Taurus. And if you haven't seen those videos, maybe I'll post that in the link below too, so you can see what's going on for your sign, specifically for Uranus for the next 8 years, because it's a big transit. And it's going to be affecting everybody, you know, significantly in one way or another over the next 8 years. It's an area where, you know, change and innovation happens. And so it's important to sort of understand that and make note. But yeah, so Pluto's stationing. Pluto's retrograde 5 months out of the year. It's retrograde for a little bit longer than Saturn, so it's more exactly 5 months. Saturn's, I think, like 4.5 months. So Pluto's retrograde a lot of the time, but when Pluto is retrograde, it's just way more Plutonian. So people become more intense, more suspicious, more paranoid, but also it increases psychic awareness and attunement to our psychic abilities, psychic impressions, downloads our ability to read and be discerning when it comes to our interactions and engagements with other people. And so, you know, there's good and bad to Pluto, you know, being in retrograde. It's just more of an internalized Pluto. When Pluto is direct too, people are seeking more externalized manifestations of power. So like money, control, you know, being at the top of some sort of hierarchy, using and abusing power in that sort of way. Whereas, you know, when Pluto is retrograde, it's stronger and more internalized. And so we're looking for power from the inside out. And people can be looking for power in ways that are a little bit more secretive, a little bit occult, like, you know, doing alchemy and magic and things like that. That can be strengthened when Pluto is retrograde. But yeah, it's looking to empower yourself from the inside out, right? Looking at how you give away your own power through your beliefs, through your actions, through your behaviors. It's more internalized, focusing on, you know, energetic power dynamics and things like that as well. But yeah, so that's what's going on. And so let's get into these signs here. Okay, so this is just a general forecast for all 12 signs. And so, you know, always listen to your rising sign first, and your sun sign can be secondary. If you don't know your rising sign, your sun sign is still going to be very accurate. So usually I recommend that you listen to both, but this is going to be for Aries and Aries rising. If you want to listen for your moon sign too, some people like that, especially, you know, if your moon's getting a lot of action, like if you have a moon in the cardinal signs this week. But that's going to be a little bit more internalized, and it's going to be a little bit different. So yeah, so let's kind of get into this. All right. And so for Aries and for Aries rising, a lot of the action, so I'm going to be focusing, by the way, on what Saturn's doing, right? So I'm going to be focusing on Saturn's station because that's going to be the most significant sort of influence. And it's going to be a forecast that's really going to be for the next like 5 months with Saturn going retrograde. So, you know, just keep this in mind over the next few months because it's going to still be a really prevalent energy. But Saturn is stationing to go retrograde at 9 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. And so, you know, for Aries and for Aries rising, this is looking back at responsibilities that you've taken on when it comes to your work and your career and your public reputation, and looking at setting more appropriate boundaries in this area. Oh, sorry, I'm going to move my mic a little bit more forward. So this is looking at creating appropriate boundaries when it comes to your work, when it comes to taking on new responsibilities, new projects in your work. And so if you've taken on any responsibilities these past 7 months, which I'm sure you have, in terms of your work and your career and your public reputation, now is the time to take a good hard look at all of that and see what needs to change, right? And this is going to be affecting you in all areas of life. This is going to be affecting you not just in looking at your work, but especially if you have your ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or IC anywhere near 9 degrees in the sign of Capricorn or Aries or Libra or Cancer. This is going to be a really strong energy that's going to be looking at burdens and responsibilities that you've personally taken on, burdens and responsibilities that you've taken on in your relationships, new commitments in relationships, and burdens and responsibilities and commitments that you've taken on, structures that you've created for yourself in your home, in your family, and property situation. And so, this is a time of major reflection, major review, and a really important time to let go of stuff over these next few months and start making a plan for how you're going to get out of this stuff that you don't want to be doing, that is a burden that's just taking you away from your path, your purpose, and what you actually came here to do and what you actually want to do. So unnecessary responsibilities and unnecessary burdens can be wrapped up and let go of during this time. But again, you can't just let them go all willy-nilly. You have to take responsibility and own up to the fact that you created this situation in order to properly go through the right channels, do things the right way, and set it up so that way you're not just letting everything fall to chaos or having somebody else clean your messes up for you. So that's for Aries and for Aries rising. Also, if you have your sun, moon, rising at the end degrees of Aries, you're going to have that sun conjunct Uranus, which is highlighting that Uranus transit. So that frustrated energy I talked about earlier in this video, where if you feel like you really need some sort of change, some sort of upheaval, some sort of disruption to your current routine, if you're too bogged down by responsibility, limitation, restriction in any area of your life, really, but especially when it comes to your career, especially when it comes to the way that you carry yourself out in the world, your purpose, your identity, a lot of different things can be affected by this, but you'll feel it, you'll know, because there'll be a frustration and this sort of really intense energy that's causing you to want to change something. And so, pay attention to that, because that's letting you know that you only have a small window of time. Uranus will be going back into the end degrees of Aries, into next year, but it's already starting to move into Taurus. This is sort of the last chance to make those changes, especially, again, at those end degrees, like 27, 28, 29 degrees in the sign of Aries. So pay attention, because you might feel a little frustrated. You might feel like you need to change something, or, you might get a download, like an inspiration of something new that you want to try, something more innovative, a new way of doing things. And so pay attention to that as well. So it can come in a number of different ways. So if it comes through inspiration, act on that inspiration, right? And then you won't get the frustration or the chaos coming from the outside to force you to change anything. And if you feel frustrated, act on that too, right? Because that's showing you that you need to change something. And if you don't change something yourself, Uranus is one of those planets that brings disruption from the outside and shakes things up and forces change. You have the option and the opportunity always to do this for yourself, right? That's one of the sort of unique qualities of Uranus. But if you're not paying attention, if you're not listening to yourself, if you're not taking those cues and, liberating yourself, Uranus will come and liberate things for you. And sometimes it's a little bit more disruptive when it comes from the outside, as opposed to when you're controlling it a little bit more. So, pay attention to that. And that's what's going on for Aries and for Aries rising. There could be, though, some sort of promotion, some sort of money that comes in, some sort of recognition that comes in later on, or actually on Tuesday of this week, with Pluto in this really nice trine with Venus, which is in your second house. So that could indicate, maybe getting a promotion or taking on a position of power and authority, or getting recognition from somebody in a position of power and authority, and funneling money into your second house. So, finances right now can be good for you. All right, for Taurus and for Taurus rising. So right now you have Saturn stationing to go retrograde in your ninth house. And so the ninth house is the house of experiential learning, right? It's learning through doing, it's learning through experience. It's also the house of philosophy, higher education, giving you a broader perspective. It's looking at your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you, your religious philosophies, your spiritual beliefs. And it's also things like long distance travel, right? So going to foreign countries and learning through experience, through adventure. And so with Saturn stationing in this area, there might have been some sort of extra responsibility you've taken on related to teaching, or related to education, or related to travel, or connecting with people in foreign countries, foreign lands. Or maybe you've sort of taken on so many responsibilities in your life that you're not able to travel, have those adventures, learn and explore in the way that you want to. This could also be causing you to examine the rigid structures you've created for yourself in terms of your beliefs and your morality, your value systems, your integrity. All of that is up for review right now. And so that's really what's going to be highlighted at the beginning of this weekend into the next 5 months of Saturn retrograde. So you're going to have to rethink these things and let go of rigid structures, rigid mental structures, especially rigid belief systems that are preventing you from learning and growing and seeing the broader perspective and the bigger picture on what this all is and how it all sort of comes together and why you're doing anything that you're doing in this lifetime. But, so that's what's going to be going on for you this week. You do have Venus in your sign, and the sun is actually moving into Taurus this week too. So happy birthday to all of my early Taurus viewers and friends, because the sun is moving into Taurus actually on Thursday of this week, so on the 19th. And so, your sign's going to be highlighted in a very nice way. So even though you have Saturn stationing, it might be stationing in a really nice trine with your sun, moon, rising sign, right? If you have your sun, moon rising at around 9 degrees in Taurus. And so this is going to highlight, the good responsibilities and sort of the results and the positive sort of manifestations of the responsibilities that you've taken on in these areas. But in general, you're having Venus in this really nice trine with Pluto, which can be very nice for you. You might feel more sensual. You might feel more beautiful. You might feel, more like creating more intimate connections with people around you. People might be more drawn to you. When you have Pluto involved, even when Venus is in your sign, you feel just much more beautiful, much more confident. People, see you and view you as being more charismatic, and they will be more drawn to you. But when Pluto is in a really nice trine with Venus in your sign, people might be drawn to you like a magnet, like they're magnetized and mesmerized by your energy. People are just like really drawn in. So you might have these really intense connections, communications, and situations that come up this week where you're really, really drawing in the right people at the right times. And it could be people, from foreign cultures, foreign countries, or people that help you to expand and explore different mindsets, different belief systems, those types of things. But in general for Taurus, not the worst energy, right? Because this will be in this nice little trine with your sun, your rising, your moon, whatever it is that you're listening for. Okay, and then for Gemini and for Gemini rising. So this is going to be Saturn stationing to go retrograde in your 8th house. So Saturn in the 8th house is a difficult transit. It brings up a lot of your deepest fears, your deepest insecurities, and it forces you to have to really put in the work to deal with those things. This also has to do with with things that sort of take power away from you. So where you give your power away to other people and taking a look at that, where you give your power away to other people by taking on responsibilities that are not your own to carry. This also has to do with things like debt, joint finances, other people's money. That's one of the more physical manifestations of Saturn in the 8th house, or the 8th house in general. It has to do with your finances and the people that control you by holding finances over your head. And so, this is looking at where you've taken on too much responsibility for debt, where maybe you're burdened and bogged down by money problems and money issues. Maybe this is looking at joint finances and how you are limited and restricted in your finances because you're sharing them with somebody else and you're not on the same page. And so this could come across in a lot of different ways, but this is the time to get your budget in order, get your money in order, and take a look at power, right? Take a look at what you are doing that's giving your power away and how you can become empowered and take it back. Take a look at your deepest, your deep-seated fears, your deep-seated psychological and emotional traumas and issues that are holding you back from becoming empowered and taking control of your own life. This is a time also of deep healing for you. So, over the next 2.5 years, you're going to go through a process where you're really digging deep and you're looking at sort of the deeper stuff, and you really have to heal from the inside out. And it's going to be a slow, long process. And it's more of a psychological, internalized process, but that's being highlighted, over the course of this week as well with Saturn stationing. Some of the benefits can be found by taking time out for yourself. You have a lot of energy that supports that for you this week. So, if you can and when you can, take time in solitude, seclusion, contemplation. You can find greater balance, greater harmony by going inward, by, taking time for meditation, taking time for whatever type of spiritual practice that you might, enjoy doing, taking time to daydream even, or to draw, or to do something creative, to write, to journal, especially journaling about your fears, your thoughts, your emotions. These types of things can be very beneficial for you at this time, but you'll find solace in Just doing things that are going to take you away from the world, where you can spend time focusing on yourself, right? And so that's going to be sort of where you'll find balance this week. Also, Uranus, is being highlighted in the sign of Aries, which is your 11th house. So this is going to be one final chance, not one final chance, but this is highlighting sort of the final chance over these next few months to really make the changes that you need to make in terms of your friends, your social networks, and the people you surround yourself with. So the people that you choose to spend your time with, right? So that's your friends. And sorry, there's a sound going on. But yeah, so if there are friends that you need to let go of, you might feel frustrated with these friendships and with these networks or these groups that you're a part of, and you might need to let go of them, or, new groups of people, new friendships can come in this week for you as well. So that's something that is quite positive that could happen for Gemini and for Gemini rising. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, you've been having Saturn transit your 7th house, which is about commitments in relationships and in partnerships. This could be commitments in business partnerships, contracts, close friendships, but especially in love relationships and in marriage. And so with Saturn transiting the 7th house for you, if you're in relationships that are not working for you, that you're feeling very burdened, very limited, and very restricted within, then this is going to be a time when you have to look at that and look at your sort of role in creating that, and looking at how you can either create better structure for these relationships moving forward, or how you can let go of them and get out, right? So if you need to get out, this is the time when you're going to be getting out of relationships right now. You might be cutting cords and cutting ties with a lot of people. But you might also be bringing in very new, very committed relationships, or committing yourself to old relationships in a way that's much more deep and more long lasting. So you're creating stability in your relationships by letting go of the ones that are sucking your energy and taking your time that you don't need to be focusing on anymore, and deepening your commitment with the energy left over to the relationships that are working really well for you. So if you're in a really good working relationship, if you're in a really good working marriage, then this is actually going to support that marriage. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to put in the hard work, but you're going to recommit yourself to that marriage. And if you're in a committed partnership, this could mean, marriage, right? That's one of the manifestations of this energy. But this is taking a good hard look at the structures, the responsibilities you've taken on in your close personal relationships, and what needs to come with you moving forward, and what you need to work on letting go of and surrendering and sort of wrapping up to create some sort of space there. And so this week, though, you'll find solace in your friendships, right? In your social networks. So going out with friends, spending time, with the people that you really like spending time with in terms of your social networks, your groups. Maybe you're part of some sort of organization and you can focus on that. That's where things are going to be a lot easier and lighter for you this week. All right. For Leo and for Leo rising, Saturn stationing in your 6th house of work, daily routines, and health, right? So this could be looking at the structures and sort of the rigid routines that you've created for yourself in the past 7 months in terms of your work and your daily responsibilities. This could also be having to reflect back and looking at your relationship with your coworkers, and maybe you're taking on extra responsibility to help support them when really maybe you shouldn't be doing that, and you should be focusing on your own work. This is also looking at, if you have employees, looking at, your relationship with your employees and how you deal with them, and maybe you're taking on too much responsibility and not being strict enough on them, or maybe you're being too hard on them and you need to back off a little bit and let go of that. This is also looking at your health. If you've been working on, creating new health routines, which I highly recommend that you do if you have Leo rising or, Leo sun sign over this next couple of years, because you will have Saturn transiting the 6th house of health, which can limit and restrict your ability to have good health if you're not working on it actively, right? So this is looking at maybe you've created new routines for yourself in terms of health, nutrition, supplementation, activity, whatever. And maybe you're a little too rigid on that, or maybe those routines are not working out in the way that you thought that they would. And so you need to go back and change something, right? You need to go back and let go of those routines and make room for new routines moving forward. And so, that's going to be part of the focus this week. A lot of good energy is coming through your career and your public reputation, through, having good balanced sort of distribution of power in your relationships with your coworkers and the people you surround yourself with in your work life. But this is, you can find solace, you can find balance, you can find more equilibrium through your work and your career, and focusing on that as opposed to sort of the daily grind, focusing on the bigger picture and what this is all going to bring to you later on down the line. And this is going to be in trine with your midheaven for most Leos, not all Leos, but it'll be in trine with your 10th house at least. And so this is, whatever's going on in terms of Saturn stationing, it's actually going to be quite beneficial for you in the long run, especially when it comes to your career and your public reputation. So it's not all going to be difficult. A lot of really great benefits can be had, especially if you have your midheaven at 9 degrees in Taurus or something like that. You can see some benefits. You can see some of the results of some of the hard work and the effort and the new structures, the new routines, the hard work you've been putting in over these past few months. For Leo and for Leo rising, Virgo and Virgo rising. My own sign. How could I mess that up? So Saturn is actually going to be in your 5th house of so the 5th house has to do with play. It has to do with romance. It has to do with things that you love to do, your hobbies, your interests, the things that you do out of your own creative self-expression, out of your own passion, out of your own enjoyment. And so when Saturn's transiting the 5th house, it can make romance, it can make fun and play feel more like work. Like it's more difficult to be able to engage and do these types of things. And you get a lot of roadblocks when you want to just play and let loose and have fun. But this is really good for taking things that you do for enjoyment and turning them into a business or something more practical. And so whatever you've been doing in this area in terms of romance, in terms of your creativity, what you're doing out in the world and in the things that your hobbies, your interests, the things that you love to do, and maybe taking that and turning it into something more practical, creating more of a structure around it, more of a form, being more diligent and hardworking toward your goals if you do want to become an entrepreneur, because the 5th house is the house that's associated with entrepreneurs. This is a time when you have to go back and look at those structures. Maybe you've been too rigid, or maybe you haven't been disciplined enough in this area because you've been thinking about it more like play and more like fun, and maybe now you need to get down to business. This could also be you rethinking a commitment that you've made in a romance or a love affair or of some kind. And so that's something that could come up for you this week as well. There's a lot of good energy, though, involving learning, especially higher learning, higher education, philosophical forms of learning, long-distance travel, those types of things. And so, you can find some sort of balance and equilibrium through focusing on the bigger picture, the broader perspective, your more optimistic and expansive beliefs about the world, the universe, and what this all means. And, this is a good week to sort of learn something new, to connect with a teacher, or to plan a travel, to plan for a trip or something like that. That's something that you could do as well. So that's for Virgo and for Virgo rising. For Libra and for Libra rising, Saturn is stationing in your 4th house of the home and family. And so you've been working on creating better structure, better form, taking on new responsibilities when it comes to your home, when it comes to your property, when it comes to your family, maybe even thinking about adding a new family member, be that a child or a pet or something along those lines, or maybe even bringing a parent or a grandparent into the home dynamic, right? Those are all different things that can come up with Saturn transiting the 4th house. And so now it's taking a look at what you've created for yourself in terms of those responsibilities, and maybe you've taken on a little too much. You need to have better boundaries with your family members. Maybe you need to unload some of these responsibilities and redistribute these responsibilities across the board when it comes to your family, instead of taking them all on yourself. Maybe your kids need to do more chores. Maybe your husband needs to take on more of the burden for housework or childcare or something like that. Maybe if you have let a parent or a grandparent or some sort of new family member into your home, they need to, carry a little bit of the burden and a little bit of the workload themselves if they're able to do so, right? So maybe you need to let go of something. Maybe you've been doing too much in these areas. This is just taking a look back at the responsibilities that you've been taking on these past 7 months in this area. Maybe, you bought a home, you bought a property, and you're in over your head and you need to reach out and get some help, or maybe you need to sell it and move on to a different property or something along those lines too. So that could all be part of it. So this is just getting your house in order, getting your affairs in order when it comes to your home and family situation. So that way, when we move forward, you're not so burdened and bogged down by all the responsibility, and the responsibilities that you're carrying are the ones that you're supposed to be carrying that are going to feel better for you. You can also this week have some deep, intimate conversations, deep, intimate relationships with others that come up. You can explore your sensuality, your sexuality a little bit more easily. So you can find solace in, intimacy with other people. And so, that's something that you can utilize this week. That's going to be a little bit easier if you do feel the burden of limitation and restriction from Saturn. But again, that's a 5-month thing. It's not just when Saturn's stationing. And actually, the burdens and things like that, the restructuring of the home and family system, that's going to be going on for the next couple of years. All right. All right, guys, and then Scorpio and Scorpio rising. For Scorpio rising, Saturn is stationing in your third house of communication, marketing, learning, and education. It has to do with your day-to-day communication, short distance travel, things like vehicles and cars and things can fall into the context and the realm of the third house, but it has to do a lot with what you're learning and your mindset and your mental activity and your communication. When Saturn transits your third house, your communication with everyone becomes more work-related and more serious. And so that's what's been going on for the past 7 months. So maybe you need to loosen it up and let loose a little bit and have more fun. Try something new when it comes to communication. Maybe not take on new responsibilities, but let go of old responsibilities that are bogging you down and preventing you from, engaging in really good conversation with other people, connecting with your community a little bit better. Maybe you've taken on a lot of responsibility for your neighbors, for your community, for the people around you, and you need to take a look at that and review it, right? So this is like a review of what's been going on for the past 7 months, especially since Saturn has moved into Capricorn these past few months. And so this is also looking at things like education and learning new skills. So maybe you've taken on, especially with Saturn and Capricorn, you're probably thinking about learning some sort of new skill that's going to help you in the long term. And maybe it's a lot more work and a lot more burden. Maybe you've taken on more than one form of education. You're not sure how you can actually manage to learn all of these different things because you spread yourself too thin. And so this might be you having to go back and say, okay, I can't finish this course right now. I'm going to have to let it go and focus on these other courses. I'm going to have to wrap this up so I can focus on this. This is also if you're, a business owner, if you're in marketing, maybe this has to do with a project like a marketing strategy or writing or blogging or, writing a book or something along those lines where you have to sort of go back, review, re-edit, take out things that are not working for you, restructure, the outline of your work, and so that way when you change it moving forward, it's going to be better and much more easier to carry out, so you're not going to have so much of a burden in that area. And this could also be difficulties in relationships with your siblings and extended family members if there have been a lot of limitations, burdens, and restrictions in this area. Taking a look at that and looking at how you can make things easier for yourself moving forward. And then for Scorpio and Scorpio rising, the thing that's going really well for you this week is communication in your relationships. So your relationships with your close personal friends, your marriage partnerships, close romantic relationships, business partnerships, even your one-on-one interactions with clients. If you do work with clients in that capacity, all of these things are enhanced. You're going to have deeper intimacy and deeper connections with everyone that you come into contact with this week. And in marriage partnerships or in romantic partnerships, there could be more sensuality, more sexuality. You can explore deeper intimacy, not just on a mental level, but on an emotional and on a physical level as well. So this is actually a really nice week for relationships and for opening up deeper, more intimate, more trusting communication in relationships this week. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, Saturn is stationing on Tuesday in your second house of money, resources, finances. So maybe you've been working really hard and saving for something, and you need to sort of take a step back and look at your budget, and maybe you've been restricting yourself a little bit too much or working a little too hard or carrying too much of the burden of responsibility for your finances. And maybe you need to loosen up and let go. Or maybe there's some sort of debt or some sort of financial burden, financial strain that you need to figure out how you can get out of, right? So that way moving forward, you don't have to carry this burden, this limitation, this restriction so much so anymore. This can bring new developments in terms of finances, in terms of your financial situation. This could bring greater burden when it comes to your work and what you're doing out in the world to create finances for yourself. And this could have you looking at those burdens as well and saying, hey, maybe this role I took on, this new promotion, this new job was not necessarily for me, and I need to let it go. So that way moving forward, I have more freedom to create wealth for myself in my own way. So there's a lot of different things that could be going on in this area, but the focal point is going to be on money and resources and the way that you create that in your own life. The good stuff that's happening, though, does have to do with your work and your work relationships. So your day-to-day routines, your relationship with your coworkers, all these types of things can actually be quite beneficial and be working quite smoothly for you right now. So also in terms of your health and, you're going to find balance, harmony, and equilibrium by focusing on your daily routines, your day-to-day work experience, your coworkers, and also on health routines and things like that as well. Those things can all flow very nicely and very easily for you this week. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, Saturn is stationing in your sign. So this is very personal for you. So, when Saturn transits the first house, it's a complete overhaul and a change of your identity and your personality and the way that you sort of interact and engage with the world at large. It changes who you are, your persona. It changes your career, your public reputation, how you portray yourself out in the world. It changes, your relationships, right? Because if you're changing, your relationships have to change. And some of those relationships will not last because of the changes that you're making very slowly and very, very diligently by taking more responsibility for yourself and the way that you carry yourself out in the world. You might need to let go of relationships that don't support what you're trying to create, the new structure, the new form, and you might not have as much time for these relationships either. And but you can also bring in new relationships, and you can recommit yourself to the relationships that are working really nicely for you during this time period as well. Again, this is like Saturn for the next 2 years, but it's relevant to where we're going with this. And Saturn, transiting in Capricorn is also going to have you restructuring, rethinking your home, your family situation. You might need to let go of a home or a property situation that is not working out for you anymore, so you can create something better for yourself that's more in alignment with who you are and who you came here to be, because Saturn in the first house is like a major reset. It's like when Saturn hits the ascendant, when Saturn comes to the first house, it resets that area of your chart, and it resets all the 4 cardinal points of your chart, which we just talked about. And so it's kind of like when you have an orange and you stick it in one of those juice presses, you squish the orange, right? And you get all the juice, all this nectar, which is sort of the rewards of the accomplishments, of the responsibilities, of the hard work that you've put in for the past 28 years, this last cycle of Saturn, right? But then you have this rind and you're like, what do I do with this? Do I throw it out? Do I recycle it? Compost it, can I do something with this, right? So you have to figure out what to do with the excess and how to get rid of it, right? And so you have to get rid of it kind of responsibly. You can't just like throw it on the ground or, whatever. You have to figure out what to do with that. But you're letting go of the excess. You're letting go of all the programming, all the conditioning that is not you, right? So you can become more of yourself over these next couple of years. And so Saturn is highlighting all the responsibilities in all of the areas that are most important in your life, the entire structure of your physical existence in this life, and what you need to wrap up and let go of and figure out how to get out of in order to create space for the new structures, the new foundation for your life in these 4 key cardinal areas. So that way, you can have the space to create what you need to create to be more yourself in all of these areas of your life moving forward, and to do what you need to do to carry only the responsibilities with you that are yours to be carrying, and to let go of the burdens that are not yours, that are based on conditioning, that are based on past karma, past experience that has run its course, and you don't need to hold on to that anymore. So this is sort of a big transit for Capricorn. For you guys though, love, romance, play, hobbies, the things that you love to do, these things are flowing really nicely and really easily. You can be very passionate and work very obsessively toward some sort of goal with like a hobby or with an interest, or you can, have a really intimate, really beautiful love affair that could come up for you this week, or just deepen your intimacy in a current relationship, in a current love affair, have greater romance, and explore the things that you truly love to do out in the world this week, because that's really where you're going to find more balance, more harmony, more equilibrium. Even through Saturn stationing and putting all that burden on you, you can still do the things that you love to do and focus on that. All right, so for Aquarius and for Aquarius rising, you have Saturn going through your 12th house right now, so you're dealing with your Saturn 12th house transit, and so this is about letting go. And so this is more about, in general, with Saturn stationing to go retrograde, it's looking at what we need to let go of, right, in terms of responsibilities and karma and things that we're carrying. But Saturn 12th house transit in general is like a major purge, a major surrender, a major letting go of old structures, old paradigms, old karma, anything that you don't want to carry with you when Saturn moves into the first house and you start restructuring your life and your identity out in the world. And so, Saturn stationing is really highlighting this. It's like, okay, what do I really need to let go of in terms of beliefs, in terms of past baggage, past karma, things that have completely run their course when it comes to, their usefulness in this lifetime for me, these lessons that I've already learned that I don't need to keep learning, right? These repeating patterns that keep happening over and over and over again that I don't want to happen anymore. These are the types of things that you're going to be reviewing and looking at this week. Where things are going quite nicely for you would be in terms of your home and your family situation. So you can find balance and equilibrium by retreating to the home, by retreating to the family life, by, just kicking back and relaxing on the couch or, at home, or beautifying your home, planting a garden, doing something in that realm that can be very beautiful and very relaxing and bring you back to a state of harmony and equilibrium this week. And, you know, things in terms of your family dynamics and your home life are going to be working quite well. And that also extends to, you know, your property and, you know, your place of living and that kind of thing too. So if there's something you've been wanting to do in that area, you kind of have the green light this week to start moving forward. All right, so for Pisces and Pisces rising, Saturn is stationing in your 11th house. Saturn in the 11th house is looking at the responsibilities you've taken on in terms of your social networks, your relationships, your friendships, all of that. And so, you know, this is going to be a review of the burdens, the responsibilities, the limitations and restrictions that are being imposed on you from your social network and from your friend group. And so people who are not in alignment with your value system, with your belief system, with what they're not on board with you doing what you want to do and what you need to do out in the world, you know, these relationships, these networks, these groups that you're a part of are going to need to, you know, go away. So you're going to have to figure out how to get out of these burdens or how to restructure these relationships moving forward so they support you rather than hinder you and burden you, right? So looking at the limitations that are being imposed on you from the outside, from your friends, from your social networks, and your role in creating these situations and allowing them to happen, right? So that way you don't do it again with new friendships. So if you let go of old friendships that are toxic to you or that are burdensome to you and that are where they're just like unloading their responsibilities or unloading their emotional baggage all over you and you're just carrying all these burdens, right? If you let go of these relationships and just bring in a whole new group of friends that are exactly the same, that's not necessarily, you know, productive or useful, or it's not helping you move forward. So looking at how you created this situation, how you allowed it to happen, and then letting it go, right? And letting it go in the right way so as not to create a giant mess. So that's what's going on for Pisces and what's being highlighted this week. Again, that's like a 2.5 year process, but it's being highlighted especially this week with Saturn stationing. And then for you, what's going well for you is communication. So just have really open, really honest communication with people in your life, and things should flow really easily for you this week. You know, you can have really nice, really beautiful, deep, intimate communication and connections coming in with the friends that actually are your friends, that are there for you, that you can count on and that support you in that way. Why is my dog is barking? Got a lot of interruptions today, but so yeah, so that's for Pisces and for Pisces rising. And so we've gone through all 12 signs. So I'm going to leave you with my barking dog. So thank you so much for, you know, watching this video. And again, subscribe below if you want to keep up to date with the astrology as it's happening. And I will see you guys all next week with the weekly forecast. Have a wonderful, beautiful week, everyone. Bye.